What if the very chains holding you back aren't made of iron, but of fear? What if every time you said, "I can't afford to lose this," or "I can't risk that," you were actually building your own prison, brick by invisible brick? The ancient Stoics discovered a profound truth that could revolutionize your life. True freedom begins the moment you act, as if you have nothing to lose. Imagine standing at the edge of a decision. Something meaningful calls to you. A new career, an honest conversation, a creative pursuit, or perhaps a stand for what's right. But you hesitate. You calculate what you might lose. Your security, your comfort, your reputation. And in that hesitation, in that mental arithmetic of potential loss, you find yourself paralyzed. This is where most of us live, trapped not by external circumstances, but by our attachment to what we fear to lose. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most powerful concepts in Stoic philosophy, the liberating practice of detachment. This isn't about recklessness or nihilism. It's about the profound freedom that comes when you understand what truly matters and what doesn't. It's about building an inner fortress that remains unshaken regardless of external circumstances. I'm going to show you how the ancient Stoics, philosophers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, cultivated a mindset that allowed them to face life's greatest challenges with courage and clarity. These weren't ivory tower intellectuals theorizing about life. They were men who faced exile, imprisonment, slavery, war, and political turmoil. Their wisdom wasn't born in comfort, but forged in adversity. Seneca, advisor to Emperor Nero, was ordered to commit suicide after being implicated in a plot against the emperor. Yet he faced his death with dignity, writing until his final moments. Epictetus was born a slave and permanently crippled when his master broke his leg. Yet he became one of history's greatest teachers of freedom. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire during plagues, rebellions, and constant warfare, yet maintained his philosophical equilibrium throughout. What did these men know that enabled them to remain undisturbed by circumstances that would break most of us? How did they cultivate such profound inner freedom? And more importantly, how can you apply these timeless principles to free yourself from the mental prisons holding you back right now? Because in a world obsessed with accumulation and security, the person who has nothing to lose possesses the greatest power of all. This isn't just ancient wisdom. It's a radical approach to living that can transform your relationship with everything. Your possessions, your relationships, your career, your reputation, and ultimately your mortality. So let's begin our journey into the heart of Stoic detachment. Not to withdraw from life, but to engage with it more fully than ever before. The prison of attachment. The more things we desire and the more we have to fear. Seneca. Look around at your life, your possessions, your reputation, your relationships, your career, all the things you believe define you. Now imagine losing them all. Does that thought terrify you? If so, you're not alone. Most of us live in constant fear of loss. We cling desperately to everything we have, believing this attachment keeps us safe. But the Stoics understood a profound truth. This attachment doesn't protect us. It imprisons us. Consider how attachment shapes your daily existence. You worry about scratches on your new car. You obsess over a critical comment at work. You panic at the thought of losing financial security. You fear rejection in relationships. These fears don't just cause momentary discomfort. They dictate your choices, limit your actions, and narrow your life. The Roman philosopher Seneca, who knew both immense wealth and bitter exile, observed that it is not the man who is too little who is poor, but the man who craves more. This insight reveals the insidious nature of attachment. It creates an unquenchable thirst that can never be satisfied. The more you have, the more you fear losing. The higher you climb, the more terrifying its potential fall. When you're afraid to lose something, you become its servant. Your decisions, your actions, even your thoughts become constrained by this fear. You avoid risks that might threaten what you have. You compromise your integrity to protect your possessions or status. You sacrifice your freedom at the altar of security. Consider how attachment manifests in different areas of life. In your career, fear of losing status or income keeps you in unfulfilling jobs. You withhold your best ideas because you fear criticism. You avoid necessary conflicts because you fear the consequences. Your work becomes safe rather than meaningful. In your relationships, fear of rejection prevents authentic expression. You hide parts of yourself to maintain approval. You tolerate unhealthy dynamics because you fear being alone. Your connections become performances rather than genuine bonds. In your possessions, fear of loss creates constant anxiety. You spend energy protecting what you have rather than enjoying it. You become defined by what you own rather than who you are. Your possessions become burdens rather than tools. In your reputation, fear of judgment keeps you conforming to others' expectations. You censor your true thoughts and feelings. You live according to others' values rather than your own. Your identity becomes fragmented rather than integrated. Epictetus, who was born a slave and later became one of Rome's greatest philosophers, understood this prison better than most. Having experienced the ultimate lack of external freedom, he discovered the unbreakable power of inner freedom. He said, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." This is the first step toward acting as if you have nothing to lose, recognizing that attachment is the source of fear, and fear is the enemy of freedom. When you cling to anything as if your well-being depends on it, you hand over your power. You become a hostage to fortune, vulnerable to every shift in circumstance. But what if there was another way to live? What if you could engage fully with life without being enslaved by it? What if you could appreciate what you have without being defined by it? What if you could act from a place of freedom rather than fear? This is the promise of Stoic detachment, not withdrawal from life, but liberation within it. Not indifference to what happens, but freedom from being controlled by what happens. Let's explore how the Stoics cultivated this freedom through a powerful practice called negative visualization. The practice of negative visualization. Begin each day by telling yourself, "Today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness." Marcus Aurelius. Most modern self-help philosophies focus on positive visualization, imagining your ideal future to manifest it. The Stoics took a radically different approach. They practiced what's called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Each morning, they would deliberately imagine the worst things that could happen to them that day, not to indulge in pessimism or anxiety, but to prepare themselves mentally for life's inevitable challenges, not to manifest difficulties, but to remove their power to disturb. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome and perhaps history's most powerful practitioner of Stoicism, wrote in his private journals, "Begin each day by telling yourself, 'Today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness.'" This wasn't pessimism, it was pragmatic preparation. By visualizing loss before it happens, you accomplish several important things. First, you rob potential losses of their power to surprise and devastate you. The most painful aspect of misfortune is often its unexpectedness. When you've mentally rehearsed a difficulty, it loses its ability to completely derail you. Second, you build resilience by proving to yourself that you can handle loss. In your imagination, you experience the initial shock and pain, but then you see yourself responding with dignity and strength. This builds confidence in your ability to face whatever comes. Third, you practice acceptance of what you cannot control. By imagining scenarios where you lose things that matter to you, you begin to distinguish between what is truly up to you and what isn't. This clarity is essential for Stoic freedom. Fourth, you cultivate gratitude for what you currently have. When you regularly visualize the absence of good things in your life, you stop taking them for granted. Your appreciation deepens. Ironically, negative visualization enhances your enjoyment of the present. Finally, and most importantly, you realize that even in the worst-case scenario, you can still retain your virtue, your reason, and your inner peace. The core of who you are remains intact regardless of external losses. Let me guide you through this practice. Close your eyes and imagine losing something important to you. Your job, your home, your reputation, your health. Feel the initial panic, the fear, the sense of loss. Don't resist these feelings. Allow them to arise fully. Now, breathe through this discomfort. Ask yourself, even if I lost this, would I still be able to exhibit courage, wisdom, justice, temperance? Would I still be capable of good? Would the essential core of who I am remain intact? If the answer is yes, and it is always yes, then you've just discovered the unshakable center of your being, the part that can never be taken away. Epictetus, who knew extreme hardship firsthand, advised, don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well. This isn't passive resignation. It's active alignment with reality. Negative visualization isn't meant to be a one-time exercise. It's a daily practice, a mental muscle you strengthen consistently. The Stoics would regularly contemplate the loss of their health, their loved ones, their positions, and ultimately their own lives. Not to become morbid or depressed, but to free themselves from the terror of loss. Seneca, who experienced both extreme wealth and bitter exile, advised his students to regularly practice poverty, to dress in simple clothes, eat plain food, and sleep on the floor, not as asceticism for its own sake, but as training in non-attachment. He wrote, set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, is this the condition that I feared? By confronting your fears directly, you discover that they lose their power over you. What seemed terrifying in anticipation becomes manageable in experience. The monster under the bed vanishes when you shine a light on it. This practice gradually transforms your relationship with everything in your life. You begin to hold all things lightly, appreciating them fully while they're present, but prepared to release them when necessary. This creates a paradoxical state. You enjoy what you have more deeply, precisely, because you're not attached to keeping it. But to fully understand this practice, we need to explore the Stoic conception of what truly belongs to us and what doesn't. This brings us to perhaps the most fundamental principle of Stoicism, the dichotomy of control, understanding what is truly yours. Some things are within our power, while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, reputation, office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. Epictetus. This is perhaps the most fundamental principle of Stoicism, articulated most clearly by Epictetus in the opening of his Enchiridion, or handbook, the dichotomy of control. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. What's up to us? Our judgments, our intentions, our efforts, our virtues. Essentially, the domain of our choices and character. What's not up to us? Everything else. The outcomes of our actions, other people's opinions, external events, our bodies, possessions, and reputations. This distinction seems simple, but its implications are profound. Most of us live as if the opposite were true. We act as if our happiness depends on things we cannot control, while neglecting what we can. We stake our well-being on outcomes, circumstances, and others' opinions, then wonder why we feel anxious, frustrated, and powerless. The Stoics recognized this confusion as the root of human suffering. When you invest your identity and happiness in things outside your control, you become a victim of fortune. When you focus on what is truly yours, your judgments, intentions, and character, you become unconquerable. Let's explore this distinction more deeply. What is truly yours? Your judgments and opinions. How you interpret events is always up to you. An insult only has the power you give it. A setback is only a disaster if you judge it to be. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now. Your intentions and motivations. Why you do what you do is entirely within your control. Even when circumstances limit your actions, your intentions remain yours. No one can force you to act from greed, fear, or malice if you choose otherwise. Your efforts and attention, where you direct your energy, is your choice. Even under constraint, you decide what to focus on and how diligently to apply yourself. As Epictetus said, make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. Your character and virtues. How you respond to circumstances reveals and shapes your character. Your honesty, courage, justice, and self-discipline remain yours regardless of external conditions. Even in prison, you can be free in your integrity. What is not truly yours? Your body and health. While you can influence these through choices, they are ultimately subject to nature, genetics, accidents, and time. No amount of care can guarantee perfect health or prevent aging. Your possessions and wealth. Fortune can give and take these at any moment. Economic changes, natural disasters, theft, or simple bad luck can separate you from your material goods. Your reputation and status. What others think of you is entirely up to them. You can act with integrity, but you cannot control how others perceive or interpret your actions. Other people's actions. You cannot control what others do, say, or think. Even those closest to you remain autonomous beings with their own choices. External outcomes. You can plant the seed and water it diligently, but whether it grows depends on countless factors beyond your control. When you fully grasp this distinction, something remarkable happens. You stop investing your identity and happiness in things you can't control. You stop treating external goods as if they define you. You realize that the only things that truly belong to you are your own character, choices, and actions. This is the heart of acting as if you have nothing to lose, understanding that you never had most of these things to begin with. They were always on loan from fortune. The only thing that can never be taken from you is your virtue, your capacity to act with wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation regardless of circumstances. As Epictetus, who had been a slave, powerfully stated, "You can chain my leg, but not even Zeus himself can overcome my choice." This is the ultimate freedom, the recognition that your essential self cannot be taken from you by any external force. This doesn't mean external things have no value. The Stoics recognize that health, wealth, and relationships are preferred in difference, things naturally preferred to their opposites, but not necessary for happiness or virtue. You can appreciate them when present and function well without them when absent. When you organize your life around this understanding, your relationship with everything changes. You still pursue goals, but without desperation. You still form relationships, but without possessiveness. You still enjoy pleasures, but without dependency. You still face adversity, but without being crushed by it. This is the freedom that comes from knowing what is truly yours and what isn't. It's a freedom to engage fully with life while remaining anchored in what cannot be taken from you. It's a freedom that allows you to act as if you have nothing to lose, because what truly matters is always yours to keep. But this raises an important question. Does this mean becoming cold and indifferent to everything outside yourself? Absolutely not. This brings us to another critical Stoic principle, the paradox of detachment. The paradox of detachment. Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition that I feared?" Seneca. Here's where many people misunderstand Stoicism. They think it advocates emotional numbness or withdrawal from life's pleasures and pains. Nothing could be further from the truth. Stoic detachment isn't about feeling less. It's about living more fully through inner freedom. The Stoics recognized a profound paradox. When you hold things lightly, you can actually engage with them more deeply. When you're not clinching life in a desperate grip of attachment, you can appreciate it with an open hand. Consider how attachment distorts experience. When you're desperately trying to hold on to pleasure, you can't fully enjoy it because you're already anxious about its ending. When you're terrified of pain, you suffer twice. First in anticipation, then in experience. When you're obsessed with controlling outcomes, you miss the richness of the present process. Detachment liberates you from these distortions. It allows you to be fully present with whatever is happening, without being consumed by craving or aversion. It enables you to love people without trying to possess them. It lets you pursue goals with dedication, but without defining yourself by their achievement. The Stoics practiced what we might call active detachment, full engagement with life coupled with inner freedom from its ups and downs. They weren't passive observers, but vigorous participants who remained unshaken at their core. To develop this capacity, they practiced voluntary discomfort, deliberately giving up comforts and luxuries for periods of time, not as punishment or asceticism, but as training in non-attachment. This practice had several purposes. First, it demonstrated that many feared discomforts are actually quite manageable. When you voluntarily experience cold, hunger, simple clothing, or hard beds, you realize these conditions aren't devastating. Your fear of them diminishes. Second, it built confidence in your resilience. Each time you voluntarily endure discomfort, you prove to yourself that your well-being isn't dependent on constant comfort. This strengthens your ability to face involuntary hardships. Third, it cultivated gratitude for ordinary conditions. After sleeping on the floor, your regular bed feels luxurious. After eating simple food, your usual meals taste extraordinary. Temporary abstinence enhances appreciation. Fourth, it weakened the hold of habit and dependency. When you regularly interrupt your routines of comfort, you prevent them from becoming necessities. You maintain your freedom from addiction to convenience. Finally, it prepared you for the inevitable losses that life brings. By practicing with smaller deprivations, you built the mental muscles needed for larger ones. Seneca, despite being one of Rome's wealthiest men, regularly practiced periods of voluntary poverty. He wrote, "I am so firmly determined to test the constancy of your mind that, drawing from the teachings of great men, I shall give you also a lesson. Set aside a certain number of days during which you will be content with the plainest of foods, and very little of it, with rough, coarse clothing, saying to yourself all the while, 'Is this what I feared?' This practice creates a beautiful paradox. When you're willing to lose everything, you can enjoy everything more fully. When you stop clutching at pleasures with a desperate grip, you can appreciate them with an open hand. When you accept the temporary nature of all things, you can be truly present with them while they last." As Seneca wrote, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a living man." The same applies to all forms of loss. When you're paralyzed by fear of losing what you have, you never truly live. This paradox extends to relationships as well. The Stoics valued deep human connections, but recognized that true love involves freedom, not possession. As Marcus Aurelius wrote about his own child, "You must take pains to bear in mind that your child is mortal and was not given to you forever." This isn't callousness. It's a recognition that loving someone means accepting their separate existence, including the possibility of their loss. When you love without desperate attachment, your love becomes more genuine. You appreciate the person for who they are rather than what they provide you. You support their freedom rather than demanding their conformity to your needs. You enjoy their presence fully while accepting the possibility of their absence. This same principle applies to work, creative endeavors, and all forms of meaningful action. When you're not defined by outcomes, you can engage more authentically with the process. You can take necessary risks without paralyzing fear. You can create from a place of genuine expression rather than desperate need for validation. This is the paradoxical freedom of Stoic detachment, not withdrawal from life, but fuller engagement with it through inner liberation. Not indifference to what happens, but resilience in the face of whatever happens. Not renunciation of the world, but wise participation in it without being enslaved by it. One of the most powerful applications of this paradoxical detachment is freedom from something that imprisons many of us daily: social judgment. Let's explore this next. Freedom from social judgment. If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now. Marcus Aurelius. One of the most powerful applications of acting as if you have nothing to lose is freedom from the prison of social judgment. Consider how much of your life is shaped by fear of what others think. How many of your choices are dictated by this fear? How often do you censor yourself, compromise your values, or abandon your authentic path because you're afraid of criticism or rejection? For most of us, this fear is a constant companion, influencing everything from what we wear and how we speak to our career choices and relationships. It's a silent jailer that keeps us confined to the narrow space of social approval. The Stoics understood that reputation, what others think of you, is entirely outside your control. It belongs to others, not you. When you stake your happiness and identity on maintaining a certain image, you become a slave to the opinions of others. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals, I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others. This paradox, valuing others' opinions of us more than our own, is at the heart of social anxiety. The Stoics recognized several important truths about social judgment. First, others' opinions are usually based on incomplete information. Most people who judge you know only fragments of who you are and what motivates you. Their judgments say more about them than about you. Second, people's opinions are wildly inconsistent. What impresses one person offends another. What seems wise to some seems foolish to others. There's no way to satisfy everyone. So the pursuit of universal approval is fundamentally irrational. Third, even if you could control others' opinions, doing so would make you a servant rather than a free person. True freedom comes from living according to your own values, not others' expectations. Fourth, what others think of you has no bearing on your character or virtue. You can be praised while acting wrongly or criticized while acting rightly. External validation is not a reliable guide to virtue. Epictetus, who knew what it meant to be literally owned by another, advised his students, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Not because foolishness is a virtue, but because caring too much about appearing wise prevents true wisdom. When you're afraid to look foolish, you never take the risks necessary for growth. This applies equally to how we present ourselves in the modern world. How much energy do you spend cultivating and protecting your image on social media? How often do you make choices based on how they'll be perceived rather than on what truly matters to you? How frequently do you silence your authentic voice out of fear of criticism? When you act as if you have nothing to lose, you free yourself from the exhausting performance of constantly managing others' perceptions. You can speak truth when truth is needed. You can stand for what's right when everyone else sits down. You can be authentic in a world of pretense. This doesn't mean deliberately provoking or offending others. The Stoics valued harmony and appropriate social behavior, but they recognized that virtue sometimes requires standing apart from the crowd. As Seneca wrote, the path of truth is direct. The path of convenience wins. When these paths diverge, the person who has nothing to lose will choose truth over convenience every time. Modern research confirms what the Stoics understood intuitively. The constant worry about others' opinions is not only exhausting, but largely unnecessary. Studies show that we consistently overestimate how much others notice and judge us, a phenomenon psychologists call the spotlight effect. Most people are far too concerned with their own image to pay as much attention to yours as you fear they do. Moreover, research on the end of history illusion reveals that people tend to overvalue their current opinions and underestimate how much these will change in the future. The judgment you fear today may be forgotten or reversed tomorrow. By acting as if you have nothing to lose socially, you reclaim enormous energy and authenticity. You stop living for an audience and start living from your core values. You discover that many feared social consequences never materialize, and those that do are usually far less significant than imagined. This freedom from social judgment becomes especially valuable when facing adversity. Let's explore how acting as if you have nothing to lose transforms your relationship with life's inevitable challenges, turning adversity into opportunity. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of acting as if you have nothing to lose is how it transforms your relationship with adversity. When you're attached to comfort, security, and specific outcomes, obstacles appear as threats. But when you hold these things lightly, seeing them as preferred but not necessary for your well-being, obstacles become opportunities. This isn't positive thinking or denial of difficulty. It's a profound shift in perspective that the Stoics captured in a principle called the obstacle is the way. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This concept recognizes that challenges aren't just barriers to be overcome. They're actually the path to growth, wisdom, and excellence. Without resistance, there is no strengthening. Without problems to solve, there is no innovation. Without adversity, there is no opportunity for virtue. Consider the lives of the Stoics themselves. Seneca was exiled from Rome to the island of Corsica for 8 years based on false accusations. He lost his wealth, position, and access to his family. Later, after returning and becoming one of Rome's wealthiest men and the emperor's advisor, he was forced to commit suicide when implicated in a plot against Nero. Yet during his exile, he wrote some of his most profound philosophical works, and in his final hours, he dictated his last philosophical insights with remarkable equanimity. Epictetus was born a slave and had his leg broken by his master, leaving him permanently disabled. He had no freedom, no rights, and no control over his circumstances. Yet he somehow encountered philosophy, developed his mind, and after gaining freedom, became one of the ancient world's greatest teachers of inner liberty. Marcus Aurelius led Rome through plague, rebellion, and constant warfare. As emperor, he faced betrayal, political intrigue, and the immense responsibility of ruling a vast empire in crisis. Yet in his private writings, never intended for publication, he revealed a mind committed to virtue and wisdom amid chaos. Each of these men turned adversities into opportunities, not by denying hardship, but by using it as material for growth, wisdom, and service. They didn't just endure hardship, they utilized it. The Stoic approach to adversity involves several key principles. First, see obstacles as tests designed to strengthen you. Just as resistance in physical training builds muscle, resistance in life builds character. Challenges reveal your weaknesses and provide opportunities to transform them into strengths. Second, focus on what remains in your control. Even in the most constrained circumstances, you can control your judgments, attitudes, and efforts. By concentrating your energy on these areas rather than lamenting what you cannot change, you maintain your power. Third, ask, what virtue does this situation require of me? Every challenge calls for specific virtues: courage, patience, creativity, compassion, perseverance. By viewing difficulties as opportunities to practice these virtues, you transform obstacles into training grounds. Fourth, look for the opportunity hidden within the obstacle. Every setback contains within it the seeds of advancement. Job loss creates space for new direction. Relationship endings make room for growth. Health challenges teach prioritization. The question isn't, why is this happening to me, but what can this teach me? Fifth, remember that adversity reveals character. As Epictetus taught, circumstances don't make the man, they only reveal him to himself. Difficult situations don't determine who you are. They reveal who you've been all along and give you the opportunity to become who you wish to be. When you practice these principles, your relationship with adversity fundamentally changes. You stop seeing obstacles as interruptions to your life and start recognizing them as integral to it. You cease viewing challenges as punishments and begin treating them as opportunities for growth. Modern research on resilience confirms the wisdom of this approach. Studies show that many people who face significant adversity ultimately experience what psychologists call post-traumatic growth. Positive psychological changes resulting from the struggle with highly challenging life circumstances. These include greater appreciation for life, more meaningful relationships, increased personal strength, recognition of new possibilities, and spiritual development. This doesn't mean seeking out suffering or denying its difficulty. The Stoics preferred comfort to discomfort, health to illness, and peace to conflict. But they recognized that when adversity arrives, as it inevitably does, it can be transformed from an enemy into a teacher. This is the ultimate freedom that comes from acting as if you have nothing to lose. The ability to turn any situation, no matter how painful or challenging, into fuel for your growth and purpose. When you're not desperately clinging to comfort and security, you can meet adversity with an open mind and a courageous heart, asking not how can I escape this, but how can I use this? Let's now explore how these principles can be applied to specific areas of modern life. Practical applications in modern life. Now that we've explored the philosophical foundations of acting as if you have nothing to lose, let's bring these ancient principles into your daily life with practical applications. In your career, when you act as if you have nothing to lose professionally, you transform your relationship with work. Instead of being driven by fear of failure or desperation for advancement, you operate from a place of inner freedom and purpose. This mindset enables you to speak necessary truths when others remain silent. In meetings, you can address the elephant in the room. With clients, you can deliver honest assessments rather than what they want to hear. With superiors, you can provide candid feedback when policies or decisions are misguided. Take calculated risks that others avoid. You can pursue innovative ideas without paralyzing fear of failure. You can challenge conventional wisdom when it's flawed. You can volunteer for challenging projects that stretch your abilities. Negotiate from strength rather than desperation. When you're not defined by your current position or income, you can advocate for what you're worth. You can walk away from toxic opportunities regardless of their prestige or compensation. You can set boundaries around your time and energy. Pursue meaningful work rather than just safe work. You can make career choices based on purpose and growth rather than merely security and status. You can build a career that aligns with your values rather than one that simply advances your position. Respond to setbacks with resilience rather than devastation. When you face rejection, criticism, or failure, you can learn from it without being defined by it. You can use professional challenges as opportunities for growth rather than seeing them as personal catastrophes. Consider how this might look in practice. Imagine you've identified a serious flaw in your company's flagship project. Speaking up might risk your reputation and relationship with the team. Staying silent might protect your position, but allow the problem to grow. The person who acts as if they have nothing to lose will address the issue directly, focusing on solving the problem rather than protecting their image. They might face temporary discomfort or even backlash, but they maintain their integrity and ultimately contribute more value. In your relationships, when you act as if you have nothing to lose in relationships, you create connections based on freedom rather than fear, authenticity rather than manipulation. This mindset enables you to be vulnerable without fear of rejection. You can share your true thoughts, feelings, and experiences without obsessive concern about how they'll be received. You can be known for who you really are rather than the image you project. Set healthy boundaries without fear of abandonment. You can say no when necessary. You can express your needs directly. You can maintain your autonomy within connections. You understand that relationships thrive on mutual respect, not mutual dependence. Love without possessiveness. You can appreciate others for who they are rather than what they provide you. You can support their growth and freedom even when it doesn't benefit you directly. You can enjoy deep connection without demanding that others complete you. Navigate conflict with courage and clarity. You can address issues directly rather than avoiding them. You can listen to criticism without defensiveness. You can apologize sincerely when you're wrong. You recognize that healthy relationships require honest communication, not perfect harmony. Accept change without resistance. You can adapt to evolving relationship dynamics. You can allow connections to grow, transform, or sometimes end without clinging to what was. You understand that all relationships are temporary gifts, not permanent possessions. As we conclude our exploration of this profound Stoic principle, let's reflect on what it truly means to act as if you have nothing to lose. This isn't about recklessness or indifference. It's about the deepest form of freedom available to us as human beings. The Stoics discovered that true liberty doesn't come from controlling external circumstances. It comes from understanding what is truly yours and what isn't. It comes from recognizing that your virtue, your character, your choices, these are the only things that can never be taken from you. When you embrace this understanding, something remarkable happens. You stop living from fear and start living from purpose. You stop performing for others and start expressing your authentic self. You stop avoiding discomfort and start using it as fuel for growth. Your life becomes less about protection and more about contribution. Think of the people throughout history who changed the world precisely because they acted as if they had nothing to lose. Socrates, who chose to drink hemlock rather than compromise his principles. Gandhi, who faced imprisonment and violence with nonviolent resistance. Martin Luther King Jr., who spoke truth to power despite constant threats. Countless ordinary people who stood up for what's right when it would have been easier to stay silent. These weren't people without fear. They were people who valued something more than their comfort, security, or even their lives. They understood that a life constrained by fear is no life at all. The freedom of having nothing to lose isn't something you achieve once and forever. It's a practice, a continual returning to what matters most amid life's inevitable changes. Some days you'll embody this freedom fully. Other days you'll find yourself caught in old patterns of attachment and fear. This is the human journey, not perfect consistency, but persistent return to what matters. The next time you face a decision and feel the familiar tightening of fear of loss, rejection, failure, or judgment, pause and ask yourself, what would I do if I had nothing to lose? Not because you don't value what you have, but because you recognize that your essential worth doesn't depend on any of it. Remember the words of Epictetus, who began his life as a slave yet discovered an unshakable freedom. Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. This is the wisdom of the Stoics, not withdrawal from life, but full engagement with it from a place of inner freedom, not denial of desire, but liberation from the tyranny of attachment, not indifference to outcomes, but independence from being defined by them. In a world that constantly tells you that your worth depends on what you have, what you achieve, and what others think of you, acting as if you have nothing to lose is a revolutionary act. It's a reclaiming of your power. It's a return to what is truly yours. So I invite you to carry this question into your daily life. What would I do today if I truly had nothing to lose? Let it guide your choices, your conversations, your work, and your relationships. Let it remind you of the freedom that is always available to you, regardless of circumstances. Because in the end, the person who has nothing to lose possesses the greatest power of all. The power to live according to their deepest values, to speak their truth, to offer their gifts, and to face whatever comes with dignity and courage. This is the legacy of Stoic wisdom. This is the practice of true freedom. This is the art of living as if you have nothing to lose.